You know winter is coming when two things happen. The air bites a little harder, and my bear decides to grow in every direction except the one I want. So, yes, if you are watching this podcast on YouTube or Spotify, the bear is longer than usual. It's not a philosophical choice. The last few days were a sprint, and grooming didn't make the priority list. I promise the bear isn't becoming a recurring co-host, at least not intentionally. Anyway, let's get into it. Welcome to Physics of Gamification. I'm Hakan Uzer, co-founder of Motivacraft, and every week we take a physics concept and use it to understand why people behave the way they do inside gamified systems. Whether those systems are workplaces, communities, or product ecosystems. Today's episode is Refraction, bending motivation through environment. And the theme is simple. Change the context and you change how difficult something feels. Light behaves that way. Motivation does too. Let's start with the physics. When light moves from one medium to another, air to water, water to glass, it bends. Same light, different path. Not because the light changed, but because the environment did. It's why a straight straw looks broken inside a glass of water. The straw didn't bend. The context bent the light. This is the entire episode in one sentence. Most motivation problems aren't motivation problems. They are environment problems. Think about a simple task at work. Logging a result, reporting a number, submitting something. In many organizations, the task is objectively easy, but the environment bends it into something that feels heavier. The form is cluttered. The instructions aren't clear. The feedback loop is slow. The timing is inconvenient. It's the motivational version of sticking a straw in a cloudy water and wondering why it looks twisted. People aren't avoiding the task because it's complex. They're avoiding it because the context reflects the perceived difficulty upward. Gamification often gets blamed for not motivating enough, when in reality the surrounding environment is distorting the user's path. Let's take a car dealership example instead of a warehouse, since I have used those too much lately. A dealership had a simple daily rhythm. Salespeople were expected to log every customer interaction. Pretty standard. The problem? They hated doing it. The form itself took maybe 20 seconds to fill, but the context around it made it feel like a chore. They had to walk back to a desktop computer. The system timed out every 10 minutes, so you have to log in again. The page loaded slowly. Managers used the data to micromanage instead of guidance. So the actual difficulty was minor, but the perceived difficulty was refracted into something way bigger. When environment bends the path, motivation scatters. Once they shifted the context, mobile input, clearer categories, and a more supportive use of the data, participation tripled. Not because incentives went up, but because context stopped distorting the task. This same distortion happens everywhere in gamified systems. You can build a perfect loop. Missions, feedback, progress, rewards. But if the surrounding environment bends the experience, the whole thing loses sharpness. If the timing of tasks doesn't match users' rhythms, if reminders come at the wrong moment. If the reward feels disconnected, if the challenge comes when people are mentally elsewhere, you're not dealing with a lack of motivation. You're dealing with refraction, an environment bending human energy, of course. And once you start noticing it, you realize most engagement drop-offs happen not because users don't care, but because the system makes the task look harder than it is. This is the part people often get wrong. They try to fix motivation by increasing force. More incentives, more messaging, more pressure, more reminders. But life doesn't fix itself by shining harder. It simply reacts to the medium it's traveling through. So the real move in gamification isn't to shout louder, it's to change the medium. A small tweak in context can cut perceived difficulty in half. Placing a mission where the user already is, aligning tasks with natural existing workflows, giving feedback at the exact moment of completion, reducing friction in tiny but meaningful ways. Make the next step unavoidable in a good way. This is the physics of everyday motivation. Change the environment and behavior follows naturally. So if something in your system feels hard, don't assume your users need more motivation. Ask yourself instead, what medium is the light passing through? And is it bending the experience out of shape? Because in most systems, the user isn't the problem, the context is. That's it for this week's episode of Physics of Gamification. Next week, we are staying in the mechanics family with episode 29, Mechanical Advantage, Reward Efficiency over Effort. We'll use lever principles to explore why smart, efficient paths should be rewarded more than brute force work. Until then, take a look at your environment. You might be surprised at what it is bending. Thank you for listening.